Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee, the final one of this administration. First of all, do we have any apologies from anybody? I think we were all here, actually, aren't we? Yeah. Mark. Okay. Next item then, do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Number 3 then is the minutes of the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance to check through those, and does anybody have anything that they feel needs to be amended in any way? Okay, thank you. Item number 4 then is the internal audit charter for 2026-7, and we've got Alex here from the County Council, the audit department, to give us a run through on that whenever you're ready, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Internal Audit Charter defines how internal audit is positioned within the Council's governance framework, confirming its independence, professional standards and accountability to this committee. The Charter remains largely unchanged from last year, when it was comprehensively revised to align with the global internal audit standards in the UK public sector. And as such, this year's update is mainly about reapproval rather than any substantive changes. The Charter sets out the purpose of internal audit, which is to strengthen the Council's ability to create, protect and sustain value by providing independent, risk-based and objective assurance and advice. The Charter also formally confirms the internal audit team's commitment to professional standards, requiring internal audit to operate in conformance with the global internal audit standards. Just some key aspects of the Charter view. The role of the Audit and Standards Committee is outlined on page 4. This committee fulfills the role of the board, and its responsibilities include approving this charter and the audit plan, ensuring that internal audit has appropriate authority and independence, receiving assurance on performance, quality and outcomes, and crucially having direct and unrestricted access to the Chief Audit Executive. The Charter also sets out the role of the Chief Audit Executive, and that's on page 6 of the Charter. Those roles include developing the audit strategy and plan, delivering an independent annual opinion, safeguarding the independence and objectivity of internal audit, and ensuring the service has appropriate skills and resources. The previous internal auditor left in February, and I am undertaking the role of Chief Audit Executive. The Charter reflects that arrangement and confirms that the reporting lines, access rights and professional responsibilities of the Chief Audit Executive role remain fully in place. The Charter also provides clarity on the mandate for internal audit, which is derived from the Accounts and Audit Regulations and the Council's own governance framework. This mandate gives internal audit the authority to act independently with unrestricted access and with direct accountability to this committee. The Charter also explains the audit reporting methodology, such as high priority findings, limited assurance, top risk audits, and significant investigations reports being presented to this committee. Any questions?
Thanks, Alex. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Thank you. The Charter states that it reaffirms internal audit independence and organisational positioning, yet the service is delivered through an agreement with Staffordshire County Council. What specific safeguards are held within the Charter to ensure that internal audit retains full operational and reporting independence from both the host authority and this council's senior management, particularly where audit findings may be uncomfortable or politically sensitive?
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part about how we remain independent?
Yeah. Okay. So what specific safeguards within the Charter ensure that internal audit retains full operational and reporting independence from both the host authority and this council's senior management, particularly where audit findings may be uncomfortable or politically sensitive?
I think that's because we report directly to this board and are accountable to this board only. Nothing to do with the host organisation being the County Council.
Thank you. Much of the justification for approving the Charter rests on compliance with the global internal audit standards and statutory requirements. Can you demonstrate how this revised Charter materially strengthens assurance, insight or foresight compared to the previous version, rather than simply restating required standards, and what tangible improvements should this committee expect to see in audit outcomes as a result?
Thank you. So at the beginning, I did. Sorry, so the charter remains pretty much the same as it was done last year. In terms of what you mentioned there, we do have assessments by external assessment companies every 5 years, and we also have annual assessments internally every year that get reported to this committee. Some of it in the plan and strategy, which comes next, defines what our priorities are in terms of foresight and insight. So we're looking now to develop certain dashboards to provide that further insight and foresight, and rather than just providing you with this is an outcome of the report. So it's taking it now to that next step. So that's kind of a development area for us.
Okay, Phil.
Yeah. The report notes that the audit plan will be delivered within existing cost, and that works will align with the corporate risk register. Given increasing financial pressures and digital transformation and climate commitments, how does the Charter assure this committee that audit coverage will remain sufficiently deep and flexible, in terms of responding to emerging risks, rather than being constrained by fixed resources and standardised templates?
Thank you. I think that probably comes with the plan next rather than the charter, but the plan remains flexible, and it's also one of the purposes of this committee that where risk does change, then we would present that to an audit committee and ask for resources to be deployed in a different area. So one of the key things that we need to be doing is remaining flexible. So whilst we present this plan to you now, that's based on discussions and risk assessments that we've held in February. But as you say, things change, LGR being a big one of those. So as the risk profile change, you might expect that the plan changes mid-year. But I think it's in the charter, we would have to bring those changes back to this audit committee for approval.
Okay, thanks.
Joan.
With reference to this question and the last answer, I think a charter is almost legislative in that it is cast in stone, and therefore there needs compliance and there has to be certain strategic steps taken to change it, whereas a plan has to be flexible by its nature because of the significant number of things that can change throughout the course of a quarter, let alone a whole year. So that's why this is a significant difference, and I would expect the same different procedures to be followed for the changes of each.
Thanks for that comment, Joan. Do we have any other questions in relation to the report then? No. In that case then, are we happy to endorse the internal audit charter for 22 and also authorise me as the chair of audit and standards to sign the charter in conjunction with the chief audit executive and senior management? Yep. Okay, thank you. The next item then is another one for Alex. It's the proposed internal audit strategy and plan for 2026-7. So whenever you're ready, Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The internal audit plan sets out our proposed assurance activity for 26-27. It is designed to provide sufficient coverage to support the annual audit opinion. So the plan has been developed using a risk-based methodology and draws on the corporate risk register, the council plan, service delivery plans, prior audit outcomes, discussions with senior management, and consideration of fraud and governance risks. The plan itself is made up of 3 distinct elements. There's the general assurance work, which forms the majority of the plan and underpins the annual audit opinion. That's in Appendix B of the report from page 12. The counter fraud plan covering prevention, detection, investigation and fraud awareness. That's in Appendix C from page 22. And there's also time allocated for management. Within the general assurance programme, a small number of top risk reviews have been identified for 26-27, and these include, but in no specific order, LGR, regeneration delivery and client-side oversight, patch management, data sharing and data protection impact assessments, and members' code of conduct. Thank you.
Alex. So do we have any questions on that? Mike? First.
Thanks, Chair. The plan allocates the majority of assurance days to areas well established in previous audit cycles, with lower coverage in areas such as planning, which is 3%, and regulatory services, which is 6%. From a sceptical standpoint, far from me to be the sceptic in the room, how can the committee be confident that this allocation genuinely reflects current and emerging risk rather than historic comfort levels? What specific audit work has been deprioritised to enable the focus that we have, and what risks are we consciously accepting as a result?
Thank you. I wouldn't say that any audits have been deprioritised, but the main focus on delivering this audit plan to you is discussions with service directors. I've met every single one. So it's understanding their priorities and their risks in their service areas. That's all risk assessed. I've considered the council's own risk register and tied things back in there. And I think that in the plan, it does link the audits to the council's plan, to the council's risks. So hopefully you'll be able to see alignment there, but there's nothing that should be prioritised in that way, really. That's your question. Thank you.
Becca?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So while the report rightly identifies local government reorganisation as a top strategic risk, the plan proposes I can't speak tonight. Plan proposes largely thematic audits rather than a single dedicated LGR assurance programme. Given the scale and pace of change anticipated, why should the committee believe that the proposed level and structure of audit coverage is sufficient? And what explicit triggers or decision points will cause the plan to be reprioritised mid-year if the risks escalate faster than we anticipate?
So I think a lot of the audits in there are thematic, as you say, with the largest risk being LGR. If things need to change, then I have monthly meetings with the Service Director for Finance. I also plan this year as well to be having regular meetings with each service area or Service Director to discuss work in their portfolio. So that's how I'm going to determine changes across the council that might need to be reflected in the audit plan.
Phil?
Just regarding the regeneration and delivery oversight, how will internal audit ensure that high-value projects that we've got going on, particularly in the town, don't suffer from stalling or oversight gaps, while senior leadership's inevitably going to be focused on the structural mechanics, for want of a better term, of LGR?
I suppose that comes down to appropriately scoping the audit and making sure that it covers those kind of key risks, and that there is still oversight of those large regeneration programmes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joan?
Am I on? Just a comment, and I hope it's helpful. It takes a bit about what Councillor Stubbs said, a bit about what Councillor Lewis said, and a bit about Councillor Rees said, and a bit about what you said. I qualified as a risk manager, so I know what you're talking about vaguely in Hong Kong, which was a fairly tough place to do it. One of the things with risk management, and I think you raised it, Mike, was that why is it based on what's gone before? Because if you didn't, there'd be no comparator as to whether there was success or failure over a period of time. And it's really important to look back historically to see where the flaws, faults are so that you can amend them and put them right for the future. I'll give you a good working example of that. Captain of the Titanic never was in a wreck, never saw a wreck, never even was sailing in something close to a wreck. So he didn't know what to do when it happened. Historically with risk management, you know what to do because you've seen where it's failed and you put something in place. And that fits in with what Rebecca said. You put something in place for the future to hopefully so it doesn't happen again. Risk management and risk assessment by its very nature has to be organic because whatever you put in place, there's no such thing as fail-safe. And risk aversion means stagnation and lack of growth, and you just curl up and die up a corner as far as any corporate entity is concerned. So there has to be some risk appetite there to take it on. And I think that's what we do, because our risk assessment, our risk plans and so on are organic. There is room for manoeuvre and development, which ties in with what Mr. Rees said. I feel so good. I've got that off my chest now. Thank you very much. I'm in support of what you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Do we have any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you very much then. In that case, can we, as a committee, approve the internal audit plan for 26-27, and can we also agree that the committee will receive quarterly reports? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Item number 6 then is the counter fraud arrangements for 2026-27, and Craig is going to give us a little bit of background on that whenever you're ready, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you. So the council is extremely committed to protecting public funds and ensuring that all council activities are carried out in accordance with the principles of openness, honesty and integrity. These policies are reviewed annually with the proviso that should there be the introduction of any new legislation or best practice guidance, that they're then reviewed sooner to take account of it. There have been no major changes to the policies that were brought before this committee last year. In order to demonstrate the council's commitment, we have an annual subscription with Protect, who are an independent legal charity. Their approach enables any concerns that an employee or a member of the public has to be raised openly, and for the council to then have the opportunity to investigate and address the concerns. We also work mainly with the County Council's internal audit service under the service agreement for counter fraud services. The counter fraud service covers all types of non-benefit and corporate fraud. Service offers a full detection and investigation service, as well as work to prevent fraud and share the learning coming out of its activities, both within the partnership and much more broadly. I'd like to ask the committee to note the following policies which support the counter-fraud function: the anti-fraud and anti-corruption framework, fraud response plan, whistleblowing policy and anti-money laundering policy. And I'm open to any questions, and we also have Alex who might be able to chip in if needed. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind the software you mentioned during your introduction, the report asks the committee primarily to note a suite of counter-fraud policies which have seen no major material change between this year and last year. But from a critical perspective, how can the committee be assured that these arrangements are actively reducing fraud rather than simply meeting government expectations? What evidence can be provided to this committee of successful fraud detection, prevention, positive outcomes or financial recoveries arising directly from these policies in the last 12 to 24 months? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. So when Alex brings us quarterly internal audit reports, if there are any frauds for you guys to be made aware of, that would be included there. I think in the past year, we've had no frauds relating to council employees or members. The kind of information and requests we get are mainly around discounts on council tax, so things like single person's discounts, and the counter fraud service go out, they investigate those. Single person's discount, it's a funny one because when people apply for it, there's an element of trust that's put out there. The fraud service go out and investigate. If it's found that they're contravening their discount, then gets taken off, fines can be applied. We also employ Experian, who are a data collection agency, and we're in the process currently of going out and testing all single persons discounts against people's credit ratings, credit agreements. So there's a hell of a lot that we do behind the scenes that people are probably not aware of. It'd probably be a good idea to make people much more aware of what we do, because the intention of committing a fraud might be just put to bed there and then.
Thanks, Chair. So the council relies on Staffordshire County Council's fraud hub to deliver the investigation and detection services under a service agreement. And it's my turn to be sceptical now. So from a sceptical standpoint, how does the council retain sufficient control, prioritisation and local intelligence within this model? So in practice, how does this committee gain assurance that like Newcastle-under-Lyme specific risks are not lost within the county-wide service, basically?
Thank you. So we have a service level agreement with the county. Myself and Alex monitor that in our monthly meetings. So there's a lot of assurance that they're doing what we expect them to do. I think an added benefit with the county is that there really is that added layer of independence. So if we had an internal audit and counter fraud service here, they would report directly to me, and my independence is lost a little then, isn't it? But having the county at that arm's length, with an arm's length agreement, really helps in that aspect, I would say.
Thank you. Joan?
Makes me seem very combative tonight. I hope you don't think I am. I'm not. Presumably there's two facets to this. There's the proactive stuff where you put everything in place that you possibly can, and that's what we have control over. And then there's the reactive part, which Rebecca referred to, sorry, Councillor Lewis referred to, whereby we hear about it, we note it, it's investigated, we find it, and then we react to it. And that can then become part of the proactive in that we can put something in place. Is that right? So it's a growing thing.
Yeah, that's completely correct. There's always more that we can do, isn't there? And as new types of fraud get found by fraudsters, there are new controls for us to review and put in place. So it's never a standstill service. We're always trying to do more and more.
I think one of the things is the minute you find something out and you shut it down, it's like whack-a-mole. Something else pops up. It's relentless pursuit of things, which I think is what you were hinting at. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions in this section? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. In that case, are we happy to note the 4 policies that Craig listed? I won't list them again. We're all okay with those? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Item number 7 then is the corporate risk management report, and Anthony's going to run through that for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee. This again is a standard report, really, in principle, that we review every 12 months in relation to the corporate risk management report. In terms of the recommendations, they are well, basically, the purpose mainly is to provide members with the reviewed risk management policy statement, which is signed by the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council, and the reviewed risk management strategy, both of which support the management of the risks identified within the Council. The recommendations are that you accept the reviewed risk management policy and strategy for 2026-27. If approved by this committee, note that the Chief Exec and the Leader will sign that policy statement and note their own respective responsibility in risk management. The appendices are there. I presume if you've got any questions, I'm happy to just try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Mike?
A simple one, I promise. From a questioning standpoint, what has materially changed in the council's risk management approach since April 25? Because obviously this is a revision of that. And how can the committee be assured that this review represents a strengthening of risk management rather than a routine refresh of the existing document?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Councillor Stubbs, it is a refresh of the original document. That's by virtue of the nature of the beast, if I might say that. I don't think it's any less for that. I think it's a case of, from my perspective, obviously with Craig as the Section 151 officer, one thing I would emphasise is that we regularly meet as statutory officers now. I mean, I can't comment on what happened in the past, but I think this is now much more robust. So although you may not see any huge changes in terms of the policy outline, the actual way that it is, if I can say, it penetrates into every area of work across the different directorates. I would say in the 2.5 years I've been here, it's much more robust. And that doesn't reflect the fact that it was weak before. It's just the fact that I think it is very much more front and centre of everyone's thinking. And obviously having a standing agenda item on the statutory officers meeting as well really reinforces that. So if there's anything that perhaps I may miss on a day-to-day basis is not raised at CLT, it would be raised at the statutory officers group as well. So to that extent, I hope that gives you the reassurance that you need. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Thank you. So the report identifies limited resources as a major risk to timely compliance with the risk management strategy. But it also states that there are no additional financial or resource implications. How can the committee be confident that the strategy is realistically deliverable within the existing capacity? And what early warning indicators are in place to alert members if resourcing constraints begin to undermine the effective risk identification, escalation or mitigation?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think the reference there is really in terms of full-time staff, officer staff, if I might say. That's perhaps where the observations made that, and I don't think we're dissimilar to any council of our size in that regard, in not having a whole team of people who are on this. What I would say is that we, as you've heard already from Alex, that we've got the internal audit mechanism and the external audit mechanism almost as a horrible phrase, that triple lock. But I think there is an element of a triple lock here in terms of that approach. And as I say, I think, and this is something with risk generally this committee will be aware of, is that the regular reports that come back on a quarterly basis to this committee are also a part of that adherence and a part of that robustness, if you like, of the process. So I wouldn't wish that the very fact it's mentioned as a risk in the whole overall scheme, that the fact that everyone could do with more resources, I think is what I'm saying. It is not something that is troubling in terms of putting in jeopardy the process, in my respectful opinion. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So effectively, the resources that we've currently got access to is more than sufficient at this time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Joan?
Just a question. This seems to be a little isolationist as far as we're concerned, a bit of a silo in that it's just referring to Newcastle. Do we have any comparators with, for example, the input from the styles that are recommended by the RM and other councils that do their own risk assessment? You absolutely seduced me with the, I do love a flowchart. I can't remember what page it is now. It's gone shrunk. What page is it on? It's pretty colours, green in the middle and so on. But that is incredibly basic from IRM standards. And I'm just wondering if we're doing it with our own little silo process, are we, how do we evaluate whether we're doing it better than some, not as good as others, or what input from the Institute of Risk Management we could have to help us, any references to it and so on? That's the one. Look. Oh, I must have sneezed and it shrank up to a corner. I couldn't. Technology, eh?
I think Craig may pick this one up.
Thanks very much, Councillor Williamson. No.
Do you really want me to say all that verbiage again?
No, it is. No, please.
Thank God for that.
I think what this is our strategy. This is at a very basic level what we do. Yes. So outside of the little flow chart, there's a whole load of work that goes on. We have a system that's absolutely jam-packed full of risks. Directors review those. So there's 2 people who are pretty much dedicated to those reviews on an ongoing basis. There's an awful lot of work that goes on, and every director's subject to reviewing those risks and the mitigations for them. And some risks, we accept and manage.
Yeah, that's risk appetite, and you swallow it down because whatever you do, it's not worth the effort of trying to put something right. The flow chart is a little bit. It's probably on a baby step away from a SWOT analysis, but I mean, as long as it suffices, it doesn't matter. I'm interested in, are we doing it better than others? I can't find any comparators, with the Institute of Risk Management or other authorities who may be doing it better, more thoroughly different. I'm all for stealing good ideas from other people. Don't reinvent the wheel, just if they're doing something good. I mean, do we embark on that sort of thing, or is it sort of almost classified? We don't go down there, or I don't know.
No, we continually throughout all of our services, including finance, including risk, including legal, we continually benchmark our services with other councils. And where we feel that somebody does something better than we do, we absolutely embrace what they do. So there's continual improvement in all areas and including risk.
You are so clever. I love the idea of embrace what we do. It's called sort of intellectual theft, I think. But legitimate intellectual theft.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say if there's something out there that's really good to use, it's daft to keep reinventing the wheel, isn't it?
We're on the same page, John.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions in relation to this?
Just as this committee got DMOB happy all of a sudden.
Yeah. Okay.
Thorough.
Yeah. Thank you for those questions and comments. And in that case, then, in the first instance, are we happy to accept the reviewed risk management policy and strategy for 26-27 subject to changes? Yeah. And in that case, then, can we note that the chief exec and the leader will sign the policy statement, and also we need to note our own respective responsibility in relation to risk management, which is a thing that we see every time we have one of these reports. Well, happy with those? Okay, that's great. Thank you. The next item then is the external audit plan. 25-26 based on, well, the 25-26 statement of accounts. And we've got Rob Fenton from KPMG who's coming to give us some information on that whenever you're ready, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, pleased to present our indicative audit plan and strategy for the year. You'll be probably familiar with this, that it's quite consistent with our plans in previous years. It highlights our plan scope and materiality, which is increased slightly, and obviously highlights the sort of threshold we work to. We don't audit every pound. The idea is giving an opinion on a set of accounts is that it's true and fair from a material perspective. The plan then goes on to outline are significant risks, and that these are the areas we consider to be the greatest risk of a material misstatement, and they are around valuation of land and buildings, valuation of the post-retirement benefit obligation, and management over audit controls. The valuation of land and buildings and valuation of post-retirement benefit obligations is driven mainly around the estimation of and uncertainty associated with those two balances in the accounts. With the valuation, for example, you've got internal valuers using expertise and assumptions that are adopted to drive the value of those particular land and buildings each year. And we are there to challenge those and determine if those assumptions are reasonable. Similarly, with the valuation of post-retirement benefit obligations, again, you've got some quite complex assumptions that drive the actuarial assumptions there, and we actually use our own actuaries to sort of benchmark those and determine if they're accurate as well, or within a threshold. The rest of the plan then looks to sort of seek our sort of mandatory communications around independence, fees, things around our quality framework, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on those.
Any questions? Yeah, Mike.
I think most members of this committee will know my pet peeve, but I'll ask the question anyway. How can the committee be confident that the proposed audit scope sufficiently reflects Newcastle-under-Lyme's specific financial and governance risks, rather than relying on a largely standardised audit model applied across multiple authorities? What local pressures or emerging risks have most influenced the audit focus this year?
So I'd say from a financial statements perspective, we've got to consider the truth and fairness of the numbers in the accounts. I think you're asking more around financial and governance risk. That sort of falls into our sort of value for money work. We haven't actually finalised our value for money risk assessment yet, but that would be where we would draw out any particular risks around financial and governance, for example. But we need to disassociate the risks around financial and operational risks with financial statement risks, which is what this plan looks to draw out.
I think my worry is that we take an off-the-shelf solution, how we look at statements of accounts year on year, regardless whether it's here or somewhere else. I guess I'm asking what work has been done before we've come up with this plan tonight to zoom in on Newcastle and areas that might be of concern is probably not the right words, but areas where a cursory glance at the statement of accounts will think, oh, we need to concentrate on that area with Newcastle, and not just pick something off the shelf and just run with it.
Well, I think it comes down to materiality, and the focus, the significant risks which we draw out specifically in this plan are where we consider the greatest risk of misstatement, and that happens to be consistent across multiple entities. That is just a sector risk. You see that in other sectors as well. For example, the NHS, for example, our plans do look quite similar, unless there's something very, very specific in an organisation that we would need to draw out. But it is refined to that extent, and obviously, we different approaches. For example, value, an entity might have an internal value, so we might take a slightly different approach to someone who has an external value, for example. The risk is refined to that extent, but yeah, I think you will see consistency, hopefully, across KPMG plans, but also across other audit firms. For example, other boroughs in Staffordshire, for example. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got sort of like a sub question in regards to that. So, with you mentioning the materiality thresholds, how can we gain assurance that issues below the formal materiality, yet cumulatively significant or indicative of weak controls, will still be clearly reported to this committee and brought to us for us to potentially challenge them where needed?
So we set also a sort of sub-threshold of performance materiality to sort of give that sort of gap around what sort of more prudent approach to the way we sort of test. For example, we would use, I say, performance totality, which is slightly less, 75%, when we design our audit procedures for sampling, for example. And I think, the idea is that it's that true and fair principle. You're looking for determination from is it materially true and fair? And if we did find something through any of our procedures, we would report that to you, particularly if it's over the reporting threshold, which is, forgive me, 80,000. Any sort of corrected or uncorrected misstatements, we would report those. But obviously, our procedures are designed where we're only approaching it from a sort of materiality perspective.
Joan?
It's a sort of comment stroke query, stroke comment, if you like. It's been that sort of night for me, hasn't it, really? You're very patient, thank you. Mike and I both worked in finance in universities. Mine was with the legal practice course, which is the maddest box frogs, but they've got principles. What tends to happen, and I think you'll agree with me on this, is there is always an off-the-shelf template that is tried, tested, and it gives some very basic structure. You then expand that to suit the particular corporation or the corporate entity that you're working for, that then becomes more specific and identifiable as belonging to that one. That doesn't take away from the fact that you've chosen to use a template. You can create from scratch, but then you get too many variables and you can't compare with other institutions that are doing exactly the same thing. So I'm all for the fact that you're using some form, and I use the word template loosely because that's not what they call it in finance, but that's the same principle, and then expand it. As far as day-to-day stuff is concerned, you will have to, I presume, rely on reporting to you on specific things, or weekly or monthly or whatever, to feed into that report to expand it to become more Newcastle-under-Lyme. Is that right? Or am I shooting in the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say, you should have tried and refine it or move away from saying the word template. Absolutely. No, but I think there's no doubt that the risk.
I actually use that because people are on the video, and if we start going into high finance terminology, they'll just lose.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
The effect of it, as I answered to Councillor's question, I suppose, is you will obviously see sort of standardisation and similar risk profiles across a particular sector, and these, like I say, the reason that I disclosed that when I was presenting the report, the reason why you've got those particular significant risks is because they're the ones with the greatest estimation of uncertainty, where there is potential for error. But what I would say is, obviously, we do a lot of work in the background. There's a lot of work that doesn't sort of make it to the report in terms of how we test in income, how we test in expenditure, for example. That doesn't really come out in the report. It is very much just focused on what are our significant risks. And you could argue some of those, shall we say, smaller, less risky balances where we do a more even refined approach. We might do a little bit less work here than we do, say, at another borough or another county council. It's all dependent on the sort of risk profiles for particular accounts captions, and that, as I say, is all refined and all very specific to this entity.
I think what you're looking at is an ability to absorb the best from other people, and if everybody's doing it the same style, then you've got some, for want of a word, benchmark or comparator, and that's a healthy thing to have. And since other authorities do exactly the same, we can't all be getting it wrong.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other further questions? No. Okay. In that case, then, are we happy as a committee to receive this audit plan? Yeah. Okay. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Rob. item number 9 then is the work programme. Given that most of us are unlikely to be involved in this, is there anything anybody believes should be added to this at the moment? Okay. I've not been notified of any urgent business, so subject to me just making a few comments. Sorry, Craig.
Just before we finish, can I just thank you all for your participation in this committee, for your time and your attendance and the work you've all put in behind it. I think over the past few years, the amount of scrutiny that's come through this committee has really, really improved, and I really welcome that, and I'd like to thank each of you for that. So thank you. And could I also thank the chair for his service to the committee as well. I think he's chaired it in an incredibly fair and independent manner, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
So well done, everybody.
Thanks. Craig's said some of the things I was going to say. So I wanted to thank everybody first of all for the diligent attendance over the years and actively participating in the meetings and also conducting themselves in a polite and friendly manner. We've all been in committees where this doesn't always happen, and it is important. I'd like to thank the officers for their efforts in producing reports to a high standard, and also their helpfulness, patience and politeness in dealing with the committee members, because that isn't always easy either. I'm not standing for election, but I would like to say that it's been a pleasure working with all of you, and I would like to wish everybody who is standing the best of luck in the forthcoming election. So thank you all. Thank you all.